Hey, do you know Texas is one of only 2 states that have the horned lizards as its official reptile? They used to be so common here, you could find them just about anywhere, but not so much anymore. There is, however, an effort to bring their numbers back.
Something is hunting fire ants across 3 Texas pastures, and it's not a chemical, not a program, not a single dollar of government money. It's a 5-inch lizard that shoots blood from its eyes. The Texas horned lizard disappeared from the hill country 40 years ago.
The Texas horned lizard really represents my childhood. As best we can tell, the Texas horned lizard disappeared from much of its range in about the mid-70s, and that coincided with a lot of things on the landscape.
Every kid in the state used to catch them in their backyard. Then they vanished so completely that an entire generation of Texan children grew up without ever seeing the state reptile of their own state, listed as threatened by Texas Parks and Wildlife. Now it's back.
We're looking at reintroducing Texas horned lizards onto areas where they once existed, but now they're gone.
Nobody reintroduced it to these pastures. Nobody planned for it. A wildlife biologist running fire ant surveys outside Kerrville noticed colony numbers dropping across 3 consecutive seasons and couldn't explain why. No bait applied, no chemicals deployed. Every human explanation came back negative. She drove out, spent 2 days on her hands and knees at the mound sites, and found what was doing it. Horned lizards, a resident population, reproducing, foraging every morning, doing what 40 years of billion-dollar chemical warfare never could. And the story of how this animal works, what it eats, what it doesn't eat, and how a creature the size of a credit card is restructuring a 30-million-acre invasion from the ground up is one of the strangest things happening in American wildlife right now. Stay with me, because this one changes how you think about what nature can fix when we stop trying to fix it ourselves. If you grew up in Texas in the 50s or 60s, you remember these animals. Little flat-bodied lizards covered in spines. Kids called them baby dinosaurs. You could pick them up and they'd sit on your palm with these ancient, patient eyes, like they'd been on this land longer than anything else alive. Every ranch had dozens. They were as common as the dirt they sat on. Then they disappeared, not all at once, slowly. By the time anyone noticed, they were already gone from most of the state. Your kids never saw one. Your grandkids don't believe you when you tell them they used to be everywhere. But here's the part nobody believes until they see the research. This lizard has one of the most bizarre defense mechanisms in the animal kingdom. When a coyote or a fox grabs one, the lizard contracts muscles around the veins in its head, cuts off blood flow back to the heart, and builds pressure behind its eyes until the thin membranes burst. It fires a jet of blood from its eye sockets up to 4 feet in any direction. USDA researchers confirmed the blood contains a chemical so foul that coyotes tested in controlled studies gagged, shook their heads, and in some cases refused to approach a horned lizard ever again. And the lizard won't do this to a human. Researchers spent years trying to trigger the defense in the lab and couldn't. They had to train a dog to gently paw and nibble the lizard before it activated. The animal can tell the difference between a canine mouth and a human hand by touch alone. It only deploys its most expensive trick against the one predator it was built to deter. But blood squirting is the backup plan. The real weapon is the diet, and the diet is where this whole story turns. A Texas horned lizard eats between 60 and 100 harvester ants per day. Every day. Same species, same trail entrances. Its entire body is engineered for this one job. Venom resistance that lets it survive doses that kill other lizards instantly. A mucus coating in its throat that traps ant mandibles before they can bite. And a tongue strike so precise that high-speed cameras showed it hits each ant at the thorax, deliberately avoiding the venomous stinger, even when the stinger is closer. This isn't an animal that eats ants casually. This is a predator that spent millions of years evolving to eat one specific type of ant better than anything else on the continent. Diane Barber, the senior curator at the Fort Worth Zoo who spent years working with these animals, put it simply. Most reptiles she works with are animals people struggle to care about. They can't form an emotional connection. The horned lizard was different. Texans love this animal the way they love Friday night football. It's in the blood. Then fire ants showed up and dismantled the whole system. The ants walked into an ecosystem with no defense. They're ranked among the world's 100 worst invasive species according to IUCN, and they proved it. Red imported fire ants arrived in the United States through the port of Mobile, Alabama in the 1930s. They reached Texas by the 50s. In South America, where they came from, millions of years of evolution had built a full community of enemies, parasites, competing species, pathogens that kept their numbers in check. In Texas, none of that existed. Open habitat, warm soil, abundant prey, zero natural resistance. The ants walked into an ecosystem that had no memory of what they were and no defense against what they could do. A single fire ant colony holds up to 500,000 workers. In heavily invaded pasture, you'll find up to 200 mounds per acre. One queen produces 1,500 eggs per day. And here's the part that connects to your life if you live anywhere in the American South. Fire ants send over 80,000 Americans to emergency rooms every year. They attack newborn calves through the belly button before the calf can stand. They swarm nursing home patients who can't move out of bed. They nest inside electrical junction boxes, attracted to the electromagnetic fields, and short-circuit the equipment. In Texas alone, they cause over $1 billion in agricultural damage every single year. Ranchers in heavily infested areas have watched their cattle refuse to graze in entire sections of pasture. The animals just won't go near the mounds. The economic damage compounds season after season with no ceiling in sight. Every chemical program thrown at fire ants over 40 years produced the same result: temporary suppression in the treated zone, then full recolonization from the surrounding landscape within 1 to 3 seasons. Broadcast baiting, growth regulators, contact insecticides. It didn't matter. The queen just outbreeds whatever you throw at her. And fire ants don't coexist with harvester ants. They eliminate them. Fire ant workers locate harvester ant colonies, overwhelm them through sheer numerical superiority, kill the queen, and convert the territory to fire and occupation within a single season. Across the Edwards Plateau, the limestone hill country where horned lizards had lived for millions of years, harvester ant populations collapsed in every zone the fire ants reached. The food web the lizard depended on was being taken apart beneath its feet faster than biology could respond. No harvester ants meant no food. No food meant no lizards. The animal that every Texas kid used to catch in their backyard was starving out of existence because a foreign invader from another continent had eaten the only thing it knew how to eat. And the disappearance didn't happen with a bang. It happened with silence. There was no single year when the lizards stopped being there. They just became less common, then rare, then absent. Children who caught them in the 60s grew up and had grandchildren who had never seen one outside a photograph. The state reptile of Texas had become a memory, a thing old people talked about the way they talked about party lines and drive-in movies. Something that used to exist but doesn't anymore. Then two things happened that nobody planned for. The first was a zoo in Fort Worth deciding to do something that had never been done before. The Fort Worth Zoo started its horned lizard breeding program in 2011 in partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife and Texas Christian University. Nobody had ever successfully bred the species in captivity. Diane Barber led the effort from scratch. No protocols existed. She invented the process. The early releases failed badly. Adult lizards dropped into unfamiliar territory were immediately vulnerable to predation. Survival rates were too low to sustain a population. So the team pivoted. They started releasing hatchlings instead. Animals the size of a penny, small enough to vanish into the grass before predators could find them. TCU biologist Dean Williams ran genetic studies that identified 3 distinct populations of horned lizards across the state, making sure the right genetic stock went into the right habitat. By 2021, something happened that no reintroduction program for this species had ever achieved anywhere. Hatchlings released at Mason Mountain Wildlife Management Area in 2019 grew up, survived, and bred on their own in the wild. 3 nests confirmed, first time in history. By 2025, over 3,000 lizards had been hatched and released across multiple sites. 617 in 2024 alone, a single season record. Ranchers across the state were calling the zoo asking for lizards on their land. So many asked that there's now a waiting list. A rancher named Wade Smith, who grew up catching horned lizards in the 1970s, told National Geographic he wants the baby dinosaurs back on his property. Across the hill country, landowners who watch these animals disappear from their childhoods are lining up to bring them home. But the zoo program isn't what stopped the biologist outside Kerrville. The lizards she found weren't from any program. They'd come back on their own, into limestone outcrop corridors that had been under habitat protection for over a decade. Corridors that had been left alone long enough for the native ant populations to partially recover. And the lizards were doing what they'd done for millions of years, sitting at harvester ant trail entrances every morning, eating breakfast. Here's what surprised every researcher who reviewed her data. The lizards weren't eating fire ants directly. They can't. Their venom resistance only works against harvester ant venom, not fire ant venom. But by consistently foraging on harvester ants at the trail edges, they were trimming the harvester colonies into smaller, denser, more defensible shapes. Think of it like pruning a hedge. A harvester ant colony that's spread too thin is constantly spending energy defending a perimeter that's too long against fire ant scouts probing for weaknesses. When the lizard trims the outer edges, the colony contracts. Fewer workers defending a smaller territory, but more workers per inch of ground. The colony gets dense, concentrated, and a concentrated harvester colony resists fire and encroachment far more effectively than a thin, overextended one. The lizard doesn't fight the invader, it strengthens the native. And those compact harvester colonies were holding ground against fire ant expansion in ways that nothing in 40 years of chemical treatment had ever produced. 40 years of bait programs gave temporary suppression followed by full recolonization every time. The horned lizard is producing something different: sustained, compounding, directional pressure on fire ant colony density that doesn't reset when the budget runs out. Because the lizard doesn't run out of budget. It shows up to the same trail entrance every morning. It doesn't need reapplication. It doesn't need a grant renewal. It reproduces. The invaded landscape is 30 million acres. The corridors where lizards are recovering are measured in hundreds. The math doesn't favor the lizard. Not yet. Nobody is claiming a 2-ounce reptile can reverse an invasion that covers the state from the Gulf Coast to the Red River. But what that 5-inch animal is doing in those corridors right now is something no eradication program in 40 years ever managed. Not temporary suppression, not a pause. A structural change in how 2 ant species compete for the same ground. A change that holds because the thing producing it never stops. It's not fighting the fire ants. It's fixing the thing the fire ants broke.